Let's dive right into today's explainer. If you're working in the world of EPCI, engineering, procurement, construction, and installation, you already know the massive stakes involved. Every single day a construction vessel sits idle, it's burning through about $1 million. And get this, the delay is almost never because of some massive technical failure or a crazy storm. No, it's usually because somebody, 18 months earlier, issued a drawing just 3 weeks too late. Today, we're going to unpack that fragile bridge between the paper world of 3D models and the hard steel world of the fabrication yard, and see exactly why mastering your vendor data is literally a matter of project survival. So part 1, the domino effect of a single missing detail. Picture this. You've got an entire fabrication yard, and a cutting torch is just hovering over a steel plate, completely motionless. You pull back, and the whole yard is at a standstill. Why? Because of a single unread email sitting in an inbox with just one unconfirmed piece of vendor data. Literally just a note saying, nozzle orientation to be confirmed. That is it. That's the entire problem. But because of that one missing detail, 400 skilled welders out in the yard suddenly have absolutely nothing to build. This beautifully illustrates our core problem here, right? You absolutely cannot issue a piping isometric for construction against a vessel whose connections might still move around. If you just guess and you get that number wrong, you'll be fixing it in hard steel 2 years later at 100 times the cost. You need an absolute minimum of a 3-week production cycle time, that buffer between issuing a construction drawing and the site actually finishing that work. If that vendor data is missing, the drawing can't go out, your 3-week buffer completely collapses, and suddenly you're dealing with stop-start fabrication and hundreds of idle welders. Okay, so we need to completely redefine what procurement actually means in this context. It is not simply buying equipment. Procurement is the pipeline that imports someone else's engineering into yours. Think about it. The vendor knows things you don't. They know the exact nozzle positions, the real footprint, the true weight, the actual relief requirements. Without integrating that specific vendor intelligence into your design, your 3D model is basically just a very expensive, highly inaccurate guess. Which is exactly why you have to evaluate your suppliers on 2 totally different axes if you want to actually survive a contract: technical compliance and annual turnover. Basically, can they build what we specified? And are they financially stable enough to make it to the end? Because here's a massive red flag. A brilliant supplier who goes insolvent mid-fabrication is actually way worse than just an average supplier who delivers reliably. Why? Because you end up inheriting their half-finished work and all their unpaid subcontractors, and your project's critical path just completely disintegrates. Moving on to Section 2, the hard gate, and how we secure quality before shipment. Once you've finally picked the right vendor, you have to ensure the physical steel they build perfectly matches your specs. Enter the hard gate. Absolutely no equipment leaves a factory without a stamped inspection release certificate, or the IRC. This is it. This is your only real leverage point for enforcing quality. Because honestly, once that vessel is loaded onto a ship heading to your yard, you have lost every practical means of enforcing quality control. And that IRC is only ever issued after a meticulous review of 3 specific welding books. First, you have the WPS, or Welding Procedure Specification, which dictates exactly how the weld should be done. Then the PQR, the Procedure Qualification Record, which is your undeniable proof that the procedure was actually tested and passed. And finally, the WQR, the Welder Qualification Record, proving that the specific welder holding the torch is actually certified to do it. All 3 of these must align perfectly. It really helps to think of the IRC as passport control for steel. It's exactly like boarding a plane. If the paperwork proving how it was welded and by whom isn't totally in order, that steel does not travel. The equipment might look absolutely flawless sitting there on the factory floor, but without those 3 stamps of approval proving its integrity, it simply doesn't get a boarding pass. All right, Section 3, the critical path logic and the domino effect of late data. So, what actually happens when this vendor data doesn't arrive on time? This is the critical path logic that so many people miss when the paper world finally collides with the steel world. Late vendor data doesn't just delay a simple purchase. It freezes your entire 3D model in this 90% purgatory. Look, to issue a drawing for construction, or IFC, HAZOP actions must be closed, safety valve sizing must be confirmed, and vendor data must be final. Without those finalized nozzle orientations, your piping isometrics can never reach IFC status. And without IFC isometrics, the yard literally cannot cut steel. The whole S-curve of your project just flatlines. A single late vendor drawing halts the entire fabrication schedule. I want you to answer this because it's a question that really separates a basic coordinator from a true project manager. Imagine you're staring at your project dashboard. You've got a massive purchase order for a piece of equipment that's 2 weeks late. And right next to it, you've got a vendor drawing for a completely different system that is also 2 weeks late. Which one do you chase first? You chase the drawing. Always the drawing. A late purchase order delays a single item's delivery, but a late drawing? That delays every single piece of steel downstream of it. Sure, the late equipment delivery might be a headache for the installation crew down the line, but a late drawing stops engineering from finishing the model, which stops piping from issuing the isometrics, which stops the yard from cutting the steel. You absolutely have to manage a procurement schedule by drawing dates, not delivery dates. To wrap up this explainer, let's look at the 4 rules you've got to apply to keep your project's critical path alive. 1. Remember that procurement is importing vendor engineering into your design, not just buying stuff. 2. A brilliant but bankrupt supplier is a project killer, so always evaluate on both technical and financial axes. 3. Treat the IRC as passport control for steel. No WPS, PQR, or WQR, no shipment. And 4. Manage your yard by chasing those vendor drawings, because sequence will always beat simple percentage complete. I'll leave you with this thought to chew on today. Go check your inbox. Are there 400 welders out there right now waiting on a single to-be-confirmed dimension sitting unread on your screen? The absolute smallest missing detail could literally be costing your project millions right now. Keep the paper world moving so the steel world can actually build.